Well, hello, and welcome to episode 159 of Drink the Movies. I'm Brian here, as always, with Michaela. And Michaela, we're having to tread into some new territory for us because, over the past
True.
couple of years of Drink the Movies, we've been covering the Oscars, in depth. It's a wide ocean
Yes,
of Oscar coverage people have been getting from us. But we've been doing the last 2 years the Best Picture winner, but we already did that this year.
we did. We did. I mean, I think that we are getting older and wiser, and we are learning to pick these things out earlier in the year, maybe. Or we just got really lucky. I don't know. I mean, the marketing for Oppenheimer really had us waiting for like a year and a half to see it anyway.
True.
So when it came out, there was no way we were going to wait. And then it was fresh in our minds, and we were like, oh, we have to talk about it. And then we were like, man, we can't talk about it because of the strike. So with this whole film, it's been kind of a whirlwind of ups and downs and highs and lows.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So, if you remember back 2 years ago, we watched Coda, and I'm like, "Oh man, that film is really good. Let's watch that. Hopefully, we get to talk about it one day." And then it won Best Picture, and we got to talk about it for Best Picture. The following year, same thing happened with Everything Everywhere All at Once. Hope to talk about it one day. Won Best Picture, and we got to talk about it. But when Oppenheimer was coming out, I mean, we were just watching that clock ticking down like everyone else, and we're like, "Oh, okay, that's Christopher Nolan. That's going to be like this whole thing. It's going to win Best Picture. That sounds great. So let's go see it." So we went and saw it like a year and a half later, after all the promotion was done for it. It was finally coming out. We went and saw it, you and I, one afternoon. We went into the movie theater in the early morning. We came out in the late evening after the film ended, and we looked at each other and said, "Yeah, that's probably going to win Best Picture." And now after the Oscars, can confirm it did. Congratulations,
It did.
Oppenheimer.
Congratulations, Oppenheimer. Congratulations to Christopher Nolan and all the producers who made a boatload of money. The acting, I mean, yeah, congratulations to everybody. And so what we did though was we thought, drink the movie self. What should we do? Because we're in kind of a conundrum because we'd already covered it. Um, and we created a cocktail for it and we had done all the things. But I still felt, and we still felt that it is important to pay homage to the winner since
That's
it's
right.
Oscar week.
Absolutely. It's important to pay homage to the winner, and it's important to pay homage to one of our spiritual connections in the cocktail world that we have. So another recurring theme here at Drink the Movies is the last couple of years we have tried our best, our darn best. We fall short from the experts at Fanny's, but we try our best to recreate those cocktails. And it started with the Coda cocktail, and then Everything Everywhere All at Once last year. So of course we wanted to turn our attention back to Fanny's to see what they were up to because they do an amazing Oscar spread. Do yourselves a favor, go to Fanny'sLA.com. You can look at the menu there, follow them on social medias because they post all of their Oscar cocktails. They're unbelievable looking. They're unbelievable sounding. They're unbelievable tasting. If our recreations have been any indication of that, and spoiler, later this year, hopefully Michaela and I will be there in person to check these out for ourselves. But we're going to do our best to recreate their Oppenheimer cocktail here for the Oscar Best Picture, Oscar, I don't know, Oscar edition of the Oppenheimer episode. So let's do this, Michaela. Let's pull up the Fanny's cocktail menu here. They did one for all 10. We can only do one. We only have time to do one. Fanny's has more hours in the day than we do. But let's take a look at this and what is in the Oppenheimer cocktail.
So the Oppenheimer cocktail is really cool. It's got some really interesting things in it. It's got Maker's Mark bourbon. It's got black cardamom. It's got date soaked vermouth. I mean, gosh, that sounds amazing. Got some creme de cacao and some almond. So we had to play with this a little bit because that is literally, I'm reading you what it says on the menu. And we didn't want to bother them. We did sometimes in the past send them a couple of emails and go back and forth, and they've been amazing. But we didn't want to bother them because it was already Oscar week and they were probably real busy making a bunch of these drinks. So what we
Mhm.
did was we played with it a little bit. And Brian, you had this idea that it was really kind of like a Manhattan in a way. And so we were
Mhm.
going to, kind of start with that to build out this cocktail. So what we did was we took 2 ounces of Maker's Mark bourbon. For the black cardamom, what we did was we tried, we thought about having bitters. At least you thought about having black cardamom bitters. We couldn't find
Mhm.
any of those, but I did find black cardamom that I ordered. And we didn't have a lot of time to infuse that. But what we did was we put it in the bottom of our shaker tin and stirred it around for a while to see if we could get some of that infusion. Spoiler warning, later this week, I'm going to taste the Maker's Mark bourbon that I did actually have time to infuse with the black cardamom pods. And I'll let you know if that invoked any other kind of flavor profiles to this. But we
Mhm.
did that. And then you were able to get some dates soaked vermouth, which looked really interesting and kind of weird, but was delicious and smelled amazing in and of itself.
Yeah, absolutely. I just got some dates just from the grocery store, some pitted dates. Just cut those up just roughly into a couple pieces and then soaked them in about a cup of sweet vermouth just to give it a little bit of flavor. I soaked those for about 4 hours. The dates were starting to kind of break down after 4 hours, so I probably wouldn't let it go much longer than that. Maybe like overnight is like a max, but you're going to pull out a lot of that sugary datey goodness in a pretty short
Mm.
time there, soaking it in the vermouth.
Yeah, for sure. And if you're seeing the pictures on Fanny's, I mean, it looks very clear. It doesn't look cloudy at all. So we had to like double, triple strain this just to make sure that we got the look correct on this. But what we did was we took the 2 ounces of bourbon, we did an ounce of the vermouth, and then a quarter of an ounce of creme de cacao. Now, creme de cacao, as you know, it can come clear or it can come dark. We used the clear for ours. And then we added just a couple of drops of almond extract. Um, I will say that when I talk about the lobby bar next week, I'm going to be able to give a I don't know, dissertation on this black cardamom almond infused bourbon because that's what I ended up doing is putting the bourbon aside and I'm giving it a couple days to infuse and see if that has any effect on the flavor profile. But I have to say, when you shake this together or stir it together and then double strain it over a glass so that it's nice and clear with one ice cube in it, it is something real special, just
Yeah,
like
there was
Oppenheimer.
yeah, very special, just like Oppenheimer. Yeah, there was something like uniquely elegant tasting about this. And I'm a big fan of a Manhattan. They're easy to put together. 2 1 2, 2 ounces of your whiskey, an ounce of sweet vermouth, and two dashes of bitters. And that's kind of what I took the inspiration in assembling this. But it was like a Manhattan just like elevated, like it was a like a black tie sort of a thing for a Manhattan.
Mm,
And this was excellent. Like I could totally imagine going to somewhere as fancy as the Academy Museum, swinging into Fanny's and pulling up to the bar and having one of these because this tasted, I don't know, like a night out in Hollywood. There was something about this that was just absolutely excellent. I don't know if it was like that depth from the dates. You know, dates have that like real earthy, like umami kind of goodness to them. That you
mm,
got a little bit a hint of that. You got a little bit of hint of just this real like nut from the almond. This was really good. And to top it all
yeah.
off, because in the picture, and Fanny's, they had it smoked. So we actually just smoked it with just some oak smoking chips. You could use kind of whatever smoke you wanted, but I wanted something a little bit neutral and just kind of to give it a smoky elegance. And you know, when you're setting off bombs in Los Alamos, that's what you get. You get that smoky elegance, I guess.
Smoky elegance. Millions of people died. It's smoky and it's elegant. I will say, I feel like this is a drink that um, Robert J. Oppenheimer, I think that's his name, would have drank and enjoyed because it's very dark and broody, but it's also like you say, it's very elegant. And I feel like he had this air about him because he could hear the music of the math and of the physics that made this work, this whole thing happen, right? Um, and maybe I'm waxing on about it a little much, but I really loved this the way that they put this drink together.
Mhm.
Fanny's is always really inspired, like the way that they do it. Um, the date vermouth, man, we're gonna have to find some more stuff to put that stuff in and make with it because that was amazing. It smelled great. It had this
Mhm.
really beautiful mouthfeel, and I'm gonna use that term for the rest of my life because I like it. But it like it was sweet and like rich tasting, like you said. Like I don't know. This was good. I'm usually not, like I said, this is the year of Michaela getting really into bourbons and whiskeys. I'm usually not, but this was good.
Yeah, absolutely. It was really good. So want to send a extra special thank you to Fanny's again, who we've had the opportunity now to do our best to recreate three of their cocktails. Again, go to fannysla.com. We'll put links to their cocktails, cocktail menu in the show notes there, and then stay tuned because we're going to be going through the cocktail that we made for Oppenheimer. The first time around, the Atomic cocktail, which was also a really good one. Here as we get into the episode. Before we do that, Michaela, let's take a second to tip our hats to the best director, Christopher Nolan, the best actor, Cillian Murphy, the best supporting actor, Robert Downey Jr., the best cinematographer, Hoyt van Hoytema, the best film editor, Jennifer Lame, the best scoring composer, Ludwig Göransson, and the best picture of 2024, Oppenheimer. Let's take a quick break, and we'll be right back with our Oppenheimer episode from before. Thank you for tuning in. Enjoy that, and we'll be back with Dune Part 2 next week. Maybe we'll get that one out of the way for Best Picture next year. I don't know. We'll see. Thanks for joining us, and enjoy Oppenheimer.
So this week we are coming to you from fabulous Las Vegas, Nevada, or at least Los Alamos, which is kind of the same thing.
It's kind of the same thing. Kind of the same thing.
Fun
Yeah,
fact. We have you been to the Los Alamos Museum?
I have not. No.
Oh, so one time when I was newly 21 and I thought it was cool to spend a lot more time in Vegas than anybody should spend, I spent an entire week. An
18
entire
hours.
week.
18 hours is the max for Las Vegas on a side note.
Except if you're me at like 22 years of age. I went for a whole week and I stayed at this really cool place called Sam's Town. It's not on the strip and it was like $35 a night. I'm showing my age here because it's probably 4 billion times that now. But there is an atomic museum there where you learn all about Los Alamos and the work that went on there and all the scientific stuff and the fear around, what could have happened and all of that. And so it's really only fitting, talking about Oppenheimer, that you found us this amazing atomic cocktail.
That's right. Absolutely, I did. Sam's Town, that reminds me, that is the name of the Killers album there. Maybe we'll have to talk about that on A Drink the Music someday. But yeah, this is the Atomic Cocktail coming from Las Vegas, Nevada. Apparently in the 1950s, Las Vegas was known as the Atomic City, probably because in their backyard, they were just, detonating bombs left, right, and center to try to get the best bombs around. And that's kind of where it got its name, the Atomic City. And it needed a cocktail to boot. So a couple of other key hits here. Atomic Liquor was the first business in Las Vegas to get their tavern license to be operated as a bar. That's fun. They sell an atomic cocktail there. It is still open. It was, I think they went to it in the film The Hangover, so you can check that out there. And apparently also there was some U.S. Army information films at the time that also featured this cocktail. My guess is that those were kind of like recruitment type videos to say, hey, move your family out here to the middle of the desert in the middle of nowhere, but it is kind of close to Las Vegas, so you can go there and get this fun cocktail. That's my guess anyway. And I don't know, Michaela, do you think this cocktail was worthy of getting you to uproot your whole family and go out to do some explosives testing in the desert? I don't know. It was pretty good. It was real strong.
It was pretty stiff. I definitely feel like I would need a few of these after working on some of the mathematical equations that they just referred to in Oppenheimer.
Yes.
And some of the heavy stuff that was just going on where, you had, like you said, uprooting your family, learning about the math is really important because it helps you unlock the secrets of the universe. And sometimes those secrets are mass destruction in a very brutal and awful way. And so I definitely felt like I needed a drink after seeing this. I feel like they did 50 years of work in like 3 hours of time. And it's a long movie, but it certainly covers like a billion more things than I thought it was going to. So I definitely felt I needed a drink. And this one's actually really good though. I thought, let's get into the ingredients, but I think that it's worthy. It's a worthy atomic cocktail.
Yeah,
It blew me
absolutely.
away.
Wow. But yeah, so J. Robert Oppenheimer was real good at real complicated math, apparently. Not really. He said he hated math a bunch of times. We're also pretty good at math. You are, Michaela, as being a mathematics guru yourself, but you're not going to need any clever math tricks to get this put together. It's pretty simple. So 1 ounce of vodka, 1 ounce of brandy, and 2/3 of an ounce of a sherry, dry sherry, probably sweet sherry. It doesn't really matter, whatever sherry you want to go with. And then I'm going to put that into a shaker tin with some ice, give it a stir to chill that, and then strain it into a nice coupe glass. And then you're going to top it with about 2/3 of an ounce of champagne. Just float a little bit of champagne on top. The trick is if you're using dry sherry, use a sweeter champagne. If you're using a sweeter sherry, use a drier champagne. So they balance each other out. You don't want to go too sweet or too dry there on that. You can garnish with some orange slice or a little orange peel if you would like. Get a little bit more of that fragrance going. And then you're going to sip and enjoy. This was stiff, Michaela. The vodka brandy was delicious. The champagne made it really nice and effervescent and kind of bready that you get in a nice champagne. But this was stiff. I will say what this tasted like to me though. It like transported me. Like I totally felt like I could have been on a casino floor at the Flamingo in 1956. Listening to the Rat Pack and having one or two of these. That it transported me right there. That's exactly what it tasted like.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I think we were talking about garnishes for this. We used a little bit of a lemon rind. You could use an orange rind to add a little bit of umptiousness. I thought this was like the classic of, it's to me very almost prohibition. It's not, it's too early for, it's too late for that in the timeline, but it reminded me of like if you were going to have like a New Year's party and you were going to make it really like old school Hollywood. That's kind of the feel of it. Sitting in the glass because it looks really beautiful. It's not just champagne. It's definitely not just champagne. Do not have more than a couple of these. And if you're going to do that, don't drive anywhere because it's very, very stiff. But I really liked this drink. I thought that this, and it was very classic. And I definitely thought that we saw a few people drinking this while we were watching Oppenheimer, believe it or not. There was a lot more alcohol in this movie than I thought there was going to be.
That's right. They needed a lot of alcohol to get through the subject matter of their lives. We needed some to get through the subject matter of the film because it was some pretty heavy stuff going on there. So why don't we do this, Michaela? We'll mix up another one of these. We'll be fancy. We'll put on like tuxedos and nice dresses. We'll go to Las Vegas. We'll head out to the Atomic City, and then maybe on our flight we'll take in a movie. It's about 3 hours to get there, which is just enough time to watch Oppenheimer. So let's take a quick break, and we'll be right back to chat about this week's film.
And the Oscar goes to Oppenheimer.
Okay. And the Oscar
Hopefully you pronounce it better than I did.
let's see. Oppenheimer. Jennifer Lane.
And the Oscar goes to Oppenheimer. Ludwig Göransson.
And the Oscar goes to Robert Downey Jr.
And the Oscar goes to Cillian Murphy.
And the Oscar goes to Christopher Nolan Oppenheimer.
And may I see Oppenheimer? Yes. Yes. Emma Thomas, Charles Roman. What happened?
Spoiler warning for Oppenheimer. If you've not yet seen this film, you need to carve out about half a day to do it. And in that half day, you need to go make yourself an atomic cocktail. Then you need to sit for 3 hours in silence while you watch Oppenheimer. And then you could come back and we can chat about all the things because we're going to talk about as much as we can in a short podcast. There's so much to talk about in this. You've been warned. I'm just telling you, if you haven't read history, yeah, we know how this goes, but
That's right.
that's the best spoiler warning I'm going to be able to give for this one. Sorry.
I mean, there are a lot of details in this film. It's a 3 hour long film. It feels like there's about 6 hours worth of content in it because it is packed full of stuff. So yeah, we're gonna do our best to get through this and make sense of it. So what do we know about Oppenheimer? It was released in 2023. It was written and directed by Christopher Nolan, and it stars Cillian Murphy as Dr. J. Robert Oppenheimer. Plus, I don't know, like every other A-list actor in the whole world is also in this thing, and we'll kind of talk about those actors and characters as we get through the story a little bit. So, Michaela, we talked about kind of in the intro, we knew Oppenheimer was coming. We knew that Christopher Nolan was directing it. And by and large, there's some few misses. Tenet, looking at you, maybe, although I did enjoy Tenet. It certainly had its struggles, I think. But you knew that this was going to be pretty epic, right? It was going to be gorgeous to look at. It was going to be vast in scope. And it was going to be pretty good. So we've been pretty excited about this for a long time. It finally came out, and it's getting kind of rave reviews around this thing. And yeah, we made it out just yesterday to see this thing.
We sure did. And this cast, we should talk about this cast. It's insane how many people are in this. It is star-studded, and also I want to say foundationally amazing in the way that this is put together. We got to talk about the editing, because there was so much that happens, and you're really kind of hit with a bomb, I feel like, at the beginning of this, because there's so many pieces that happen very quickly. I mean, I stopped counting at like 47 different scenes, and we were maybe 30 minutes into the movie. I mean, there's so many little pieces. I have no idea how long this took to film. But there's so much that comes into this story. And so we're going to try and organize it a little bit for you listeners out there, to talk about all these things in one big sweeping recording. But yeah, Cillian Murphy is absolutely tremendous in this film. And it shows him it shows Oppenheimer, J. Robert Oppenheimer, from the age of like 22 all the way up into the 60s, when he's, I don't know, 70 years old, receiving an award for all of the work that he did. It's amazing how it encompasses not only his life, but what happens to his work in general, what happens in this time at Los Alamos, where he's working on all of building the atomic bomb with this team. And then, what we come to find out happens afterwards, and his dealings with this Louis Strauss. How do we say it? There's even a joke about it in there's even a joke about that in the movie, Strauss.
Yeah, it kind of opens up with that joke there is Strauss. And yeah, this thing is kind of woven in three parts, and they're telling kind of the same story, and it's like bonkers to me, like the editing of it and how they kept it straight, and how like one kind of like seamlessly flowed flew. I don't even know how you said it. How they seamlessly like worked into each other was really pretty fantastic, and they did a really great job of, in the previews, really kind of masking what this was going to be about and who all was in it, right? Because we knew obviously Cillian Murphy was going to be Oppenheimer. I think we knew that Emily Blunt was going to be his wife, Kitty Oppenheimer. We knew that Robert Downey Jr. Was going to be this Louis Strauss guy, and we knew that Matt Damon was playing this Army general, Leslie Groves, but we didn't know like any of these other people. Like I didn't even know like until last week that Florence Pugh is in it, and she's a very important character. Like through the first like hour of the film, we didn't know like any of these others. You have Josh Hartnett, Casey Affleck, Remy Malek is in it, and like he's in like the first third. He doesn't even have like a speaking part until like the very end of the movie. We're like, what is Remy Malek doing here? Like everyone is in this thing. Alden Ehrenreich is in it. It's nuts. And they did a really good job of kind of masking that, because when you see something like Oppenheimer, it's the same kind of thing that people thought about when like Titanic was coming out, right? Like everyone knows, or not everyone, but people generally know that Oppenheimer, led the Manhattan Project, created this bomb, and that's kind of the story. So where is this movie going to go? What's going to be interesting or unique about it? How much is it going to just be like a telling of his life, or just a telling of the Manhattan Project? But it did a really good job, I think, of fleshing out kind of the scope of who Dr. Oppenheimer was, who he who he turned into during the Manhattan Project, and then ultimately what kind of effects that has on a man, right? The film opens up with that quote. I'm going to look it up here real quick. Yeah, so I mean, it opens up with this quote, right? Prometheus stole fire from the gods and gave it to man. For this, he was chained to a rock and tortured for eternity. And that is the telling of Dr. Oppenheimer in this film.
Yeah, for sure. It starts off in a very interesting way. Let's talk a little bit about J. Robert Oppenheimer. He was pretty brilliant. He starts. I want to say it starts, but there's a lot of cuts, and that's why we're breaking it up the way we are to try and better explain it. But he starts his career in at a Cavendish laboratory in Cambridge, and it actually shows that he gets really upset and he gives in to his anger and he tries to poison an apple.
He does, yeah.
That's interesting. And then he meets Niels Bohr, and Niels Bohr is going to grab this apple and he keeps him from eating it. And so I guess he learns the error of his ways, but that sort of comes back to bite him because I guess he admits to doing this at some point. He ends up getting a PhD in physics, which is pretty hard to do. And he meets Werner Heisenberg. Werner Heisenberg is important if you know a thing or two about World War II and how the Germans started to work on an atomic bomb. It is back in Berkeley, California, at Caltech, where Oppenheimer ends up meeting Jean Tatlock. Now, we should talk about this because Florence Pugh is amazing, and I didn't know she was in this film until about a week ago. So she does this amazing job of just completely recreating herself in every film that she's been in. She is just a gem to watch in this. She's very she really seems to like Oppenheimer, but he keeps giving her flowers. She keeps throwing them away. She's like, "Stop giving me flowers. What is wrong with you?" But then she asks him out, and they seem to have this very unhealthy yet incredibly like palpably toxic I don't know, attraction to each other, I feel.
Yes.
So Oppenheimer apparently is a total philanderer. Like he's a total womanizer. They keep saying that to him. We only really meet two of the women, or maybe three of the women that he had some sort of relationship with, and Jean Tatlock is the first one we see. And it's interesting because she's also a brilliant mind, but she's a member of the Communist Party. And, this is at the time of the war in the world where you really had to decide kind of, are you going to be a member of that party or not? Because what happens later is, everybody who was even thought of as a member, they were blacklisted in whatever profession there was, and their lives were ruined. And
yeah, exactly. Yeah. Meet the Ricardos that just came out last year does a really good job of shining a light kind of on that, and not necessarily more lighthearted, but in a more comedic sort of instance there with Lucille Ball and there and that, and so it is kind of interesting. I do really like Florence Pugh here in this as Jean Tatlock, because it is very palpable. It's very kind of passionate, but almost it's not even just physically how attracted they are to each other, but it's also kind of like this mental sort of stimulation, I think, that Oppenheimer is getting from her. And then same kind of thing then with his to be bride, Kitty Oppenheimer is played by Emily Blunt. Same kind of thing, right? I think that these two women kind of really challenged Oppenheimer, who is like you mentioned, kind of this notorious philanderer kind of a figure, but they could really kind of hold his attention mentally. Being a genius, I would think, I'm not a genius in any sort of sense about anything, but it seems like it would be something looking from the outside in, that would be very, very lonely, because you don't have people that can kind of keep up with you intellectually. And that's where kind of this Communist Party and Jean Tatlock and Kitty Oppenheimer, and then these other scientists that we're bringing into the Manhattan Project, and that's kind of what gets kicked off, right? So we meet Leslie Groves, the Army general there, played by Matt Damon, comes in and is basically like, "Hey, we know that you're a communist, or you have some communist ties, or maybe communist sympathies. But we're having this war with Germany. They're building bombs, trying to build bombs. We need to do that too. So we're going to maybe kind of overlook that because we really need your help in this right now."
This was definitely an example of people overlooking, I guess, the quote unquote sins of people because of the brilliantness of their minds, and the stakes that are really high for the greater good, right? So
yeah, exactly. He's Oppenheimer even has a really good line there, as he's kind of accumulating all of these scientists to come around, and they're basically having meetings, and that's kind of one of the ongoing things, is these scientists are grappling with the fact that they're creating something that on one hand is a miracle of science, but on the other hand has the potential to completely destroy the world, and they're kind of grappling with that. And he has a really good kind of statement, right? He says, "I don't know if the people we're building this for are worthy of having it, but the Nazis are definitely not." So
Right.
we need to get it first, because this one over here is a coin toss, but that one definitely is bad.
Yeah. We know what will happen if the Nazis have a bomb. And so it's interesting, right? We meet a whole cast of like genius characters that as a person who grew up in like a STEM environment, right? We meet Niels Bohr, we meet Albert Einstein. I mean, they seem to, Oppenheimer and Einstein have this kind of communal friendship where, they're looking at this math problem together. And of course, Einstein's like, "I hate math. Why are you giving this to me? My math sucks," which is funny because his math is way better than mine would ever be. But they're all kind of coming together, and they're strong personalities, right? Because as you said, when you're a genius in your own right, and you have this curiosity and the willingness to and the determination to figure something out, just for the sake of figuring it out, that requires a lot of headfastness and strength. And so you're not used to backing down. And so you have all these brilliant people that J. Robert Oppenheimer kind of gathers together, and not only gathers together, but puts in the middle of nowhere. Many of them he puts in the middle of nowhere, where they build this town, and they're working on getting enough plutonium and I think uranium to create the bombs, the two different bombs, because the idea is the same. They're going to split. I think this is how this works. They split the atom, it causes a chain reaction, and everything kind of splits and splits and splits. And in order to do that, they have to have a testing site, which happens in Los Alamos. There's other sites in different areas of the United States, and they're compartmentalized because, of course, we don't want this to get out, the secret to get out. But all of these personalities come together, and they're all very proud. And what happens when you want to quit your job and you're working on the most secret thing that could end the world or end the war or end all wars? And J. Robert Oppenheimer had to really appeal to all of these people and get them to work on their things, and get everybody to kind of get along long enough to get this done, and to do it in a very quick timeline, because there was a lot of resources thrown at this by the US government, but they also didn't want to let other allies know that this was happening. And one of their allies was Russia, and they didn't want Russia to know that this was happening, and they didn't want to share in the science. And there's a lot of really interesting things that this brought up that helped open my paradigm as a human and a person who likes science, and think about, hey, if it's all for the good of science, where do you draw the line in sharing some of these things, and asking people for help, and getting, at what point does the criticalness of who a person is measure up against what they have done or what their beliefs are, right?
Yeah, for sure. And that's that's kind of the core of what they're grappling with there, and it does a really good job kind of examining that, right? You're doing it kind of for ultimately for the greater good, but you're talking about kind of all these theoretical physicists, which is just kind of like this new kind of emerging way of thinking, right? It's something that Einstein kind of kicked off, and then all of these beautiful mind type of figures are really kind of running with it, and kind of pushing the limits of what can be found, what can be explored, and those kinds of things. So on one hand, if you're a scientist, if this is what you do, this is your life's work, your career, this is what you're a genius in, of course you're interested in the science behind this. But then how do you grapple with the science is great and important, but the end result of that is going to be the lost lives of 200,000 people. And then for Oppenheimer in particular, who is kind of leading the charge of this, leading this project, how much of kind of the end result is something that is to blame with you, how much of it is then after you build it, it's something that's out of control. There's a really kind of beautiful scene after they've built the bomb. We'll kind of talk about the way that the bomb looks and stuff here in a minute, because obviously they get it, they blow it up. It's been very big deal about Nolan talking about how it was a real actual explosion and things there that was made. But there's kind of this very telling scene is kind of after, like the day after this explosion happens, the test run of this thing, they're just loading these two bombs up into these trucks and chaining them down and just driving off, right? You spend 2 years or 3 years and $2 billion building these things, and then they're taken out of your hands, right? He's even talking to, I think, one of the pilots maybe that's going to be dropping it, and he's trying to tell him how high he needs to be before he drops it, and the pilot's like, well, you're not the one dropping it, so I'll decide how high I need to be, and stuff like that. So you spend all this time and energy and sleepless nights building to this new beautiful new science, but ultimately then how do you grapple with the consequences of something that is really out of your hands?
Yeah. I and so much is happening with Oppenheimer, and at the way this is filmed and the way it's edited is you're seeing pieces, and none of it is in chronological order. So
well, that's the weird thing, is that it's not in chronological order, but it's still telling the story chronologically. Even as it's going like into the future, and they're going into kind of this kangaroo court sort of thing that Oppenheimer finds himself in kind of later in life, this very stacked kind of thing against him that's bringing up all of his communist potential ties and stuff like that. It's still even though we're going into the future of Oppenheimer's life, it's still in the way that they're doing kind of these interviews and this questioning and stuff is still telling the story chronologically, which was something that I thought was really neat. It wasn't necessarily skipping around the timeline of the story being told. It was just skipping around the timeline of the narrator of the story.
Yes. Yeah. And I think that's one of the things that I mean, this definitely is going to get some sort of nod for editing for this reason. When, Oppenheimer is having his, he gets married to Kitty, they move out, and they move out to Los Alamos. And at the beginning of this whole thing, he said, I really want to figure out a way to get physics in New Mexico and put that together and make a living doing that. And he figured out a way to do that, because, it turns out New Mexico has a lot of open space. If you're going to test a nuclear bomb, you're going to want a lot of open space just in case. And so I really want to talk about the scenes where they're building out the space to kind of measure how well the bomb goes off. They call it a Trinity test. You can look it up. And it's really amazing, because they start building out like these kind of shelter areas, and then they keep moving them back, and then they keep moving them back. And then turns out when they finally decide where they're going to put them, they're like 6 miles away from where the bomb actually goes off. And they have all this stuff that we think it seems silly, to like keep their eyes safe. And, they've got they're like, don't look at the light, turn around, and then you can look at it. But you got these weird looking, like, welding glass that you can put up so that you can look at it, and what is it actually going to do? And it's there where Matt Damon's character Leslie Groves, the general, is asking Oppenheimer, hey, you know, what are the chances of this working? And he says, oh no, that's not the question. It's whether or not there's going to be this chain reaction that ends up just setting the atmosphere ablaze. And if that happens, there's no stopping it, and it could blow up the entire world. But the chances of that are really small. And he says, well, how small? And he says, well, it's near zero. And as a math person, that just drove me crazy, because near zero is a very relative term. And, you know, is that like 1%? Is that like 0.1%? Is it 0.001%? I mean, how near to zero are we going to get? And so, you know, I love the scene where they're showing kind of how this is going to happen, and where they're putting together the different parts of this bomb. And, you know, it looks like they've actually put like masking tape over parts of it, which is terrifying. But we spent $2 billion as a country, and that's where we came from, but that's what it looked like. And the fact that they were far enough away from this bomb, they thought, to be safe. But if something went wrong, it wouldn't have mattered. This would have just been the end of the world.
Yeah, exactly. And then how do you grapple with that, right? You have the bomb kind of goes off there, and then you know, kind of the rest of the film then is kind of the aftermath of that, of him dealing with, you know, what that means and what that legacy is. And it does a really good job of kind of presenting, you know, Oppenheimer as this character who on one hand is on the cover of Time magazine as the father of this weapon that ended the war, but on the other hand, you know, he's having these hallucinations about all the people that he killed, and is you know, being you know, kind of put through the ringer through this this quote unquote like court proceeding and things like that, which is really, I don't know, kind of interesting, and kind of you know, self-examining in a way that's really well done, and really fascinating. So that's kind of then the second, I guess, kind of act of the movie. Although you've been getting bits and pieces of it here as he's in this, and then you're also getting kind of this Lewis Strauss, who's being you know, put up to be a member of I think it's Eisenhower's, or not Eisenhower's cabinet, whoever's cabinet he was being put up there as kind of this you know, kind of the senatorial proceedings. You're getting that kind of part of his story there, and how Oppenheimer ends up getting kind of, you know, dragged through the mud through this. So it really does a good job of looking at the legacy of Oppenheimer, I think, in that stance. You know, now, you know, kind of with the benefit of time, I guess, and obviously, you know, the men and women who were part of this, you know, have passed on now. You know, for the most part, you're able to kind of look at it, you know, through a little bit clearer lens of, you know, what that means, like where does your duty lie and end, and you know, kind of these impossible choices that had to be made during something like World War II, and kind of the everlasting ramifications of those. And it was really well done, and Cillian Murphy is really incredible, and kind of how he carries that weight, you know, throughout the rest of the film, you know, going from this kind of playboy, almost like wisecracking in a way, smartest person in the room at all the times, and how, you know, just kind of the weight of his genius and actions weigh on him. Just really well done.
It is really well done. I mean, I think we're seeing Oppenheimer in this room being interrogated, basically. And at first I didn't fully understand what was going on. I didn't realize that what they were talking about was whether or not they would continue to allow him to have security clearance. And then it was like, well, so what if they revoke it? And it was a really big deal, because when, you know, the bomb was created, and when it was, and the bombs were dropped, it did end the war. But it came with a absolutely terrible price that we probably still won't ever fully understand. And J. Robert Oppenheimer understood it better than most people at the time. And what I love are the scenes where right after the bomb has been dropped, he didn't even know. I mean, we talk about this where he's kind of sees the bombs go off into the sunset. And then the general is like, yeah, I'll let you know what happens if I can. And then he hears about it on the radio that we dropped a bomb. And the cavalierness almost with which some people are talking about this, right? We had Truman was there in a meeting, or I think it might have been even Truman's secretary that's like going through all the cities and is like, oh, well, let's strike this city off the list because I honeymooned there and it's really pretty. So we're not going to kill hundreds of thousands of people there. We'll pick this other city. And just the way in which it's so tone deaf to what's actually happening. And Oppenheimer is not only a genius and really understands the math and physics behind all of this that's going to happen, he really understands the effect that it's going to have on human life. And even though you're in a war and you're trying to save, I guess, Americans and allies from further death and destruction, there were a lot of innocent people that died when both of these bombs dropped. And so I really enjoyed watching Cillian Murphy's, depiction of how Oppenheimer changes his thinking over time. He seems to really not want to get himself involved. He doesn't want to get himself involved in the Communist Party. He doesn't really want to get himself involved with having some of the discussions around, hey, we're making a bomb and we're trying to figure out a way to make the bomb happen. But should we make a bomb? Should, innocent people are going to die? He doesn't really want to get involved in any of that until after the bomb goes off. And then, according to history, right, Oppenheimer becomes one of the biggest critics around nuclear warfare in general. And he's like, look, we could make a bigger bomb. We could make a hydrogen bomb, but we shouldn't want to do that because what are we going to do? Eventually, we're going to make too many of these and we'll set them off and the whole world will explode and we'll just destroy ourselves as a human world, right? Like, and that really doesn't go well when you're in the business of making bombs. Right.
Yeah, and I like kind of the varying viewpoints on it too. Robert Downey Jr., who is playing Louis Strauss, who is very excellent in the role, is kind of almost this kind of like paranoid figure, especially kind of at the very, very beginning of the movie. You're kind of there with Oppenheimer's meeting Louis Strauss kind of at the beginning is there is in Princeton, I think, maybe potentially, I don't where Louis Strauss is kind of overseeing the academic staff, I guess, and Oppenheimer is there for a job and he feels kind of slighted in some way by Oppenheimer in this, which kind of gets that ball rolling for kind of this procession and things that's going to happen and kind of drag Oppenheimer through the mud there, so to speak. But kind of from his perspective was that Oppenheimer was then only kind of speaking out about this stuff because he wanted to be kind of the sole creator of this weapon, of this technology. He wanted to be kind of the sole owner of it, and so it really does kind of a kind of a really great job, and the way that it's kind of woven in these three sections of really kind of going into that, right? Was it kind of this narcissism that Oppenheimer had, or was it kind of the realization of after the fact? And Christopher Nolan does a really good job of the way kind of telling the story and kind of like the emotional breakdown is kind of almost the trauma of what he had done starts to kind of set in on Oppenheimer. And you get a really great line from Kitty Oppenheimer, Emily Blunt's character there at the end. She's like, why are you letting them do this? If you let them tar and feather you, do you think that the world will forgive you for what you did? And that's something pretty tough to wrangle with. There as you look at that. So I think we kind of talked about the kind of the emotional and theoretical implications of what it meant to be Oppenheimer. Let's talk a little bit about kind of the specific kind of bits of the movie. Michaela, was there anything in particular, the way that it was shot or the way that it sounded or any of the particular scenes or set design or anything like that. One of the interesting things about this movie is it only cost $100 million to make. Indiana Jones that we just watched cost $300 million to make. I don't know how you spend $300 million on that. You only spent $100 million on this. That doesn't make any sense to me. I think there's some cooking of some books there. Maybe it's Oppenheimer is doing some mathematics there on that. I don't know how that works. But what about the movie that you liked? Anything in particular, anything that didn't sit as well with you?
No. Well, all good questions, Brian. First of all, I want to talk about Robert Downey Jr. as Louis
I'm a
Strauss.
theoretical podcast co-host.
Yes, that's right. That's what we're gonna do now. We're gonna drink the theory with with Michaela and Brian. I want to talk about Robert Downey Jr. as Louis Strauss. I have seen this preview, I don't know how many times. It wasn't until, I don't know, 5 minutes into the movie when I looked over at you and was like, that's Robert Downey Jr. And I don't know if you looked at me like, duh, or what, but the makeup was amazing. I want to talk about that because I only realized it was Robert Downey Jr. After hearing the cadence of his voice. And let me tell you, I've been listening to Robert Downey Jr. since I was about 13 years old because he's my favorite actor in the world.
That's right.
So,
that's right. No shades of Tony Stark here. In this, Robert Downey Jr.
And we always knew, I personally always knew that he was one of the most amazing actors to ever grace the silver screen. And this proves he's, I'm so right. And the world is right. He is such a good character. He plays this kind of villain, hiding in plain sight, trying to strip Oppenheimer of all of his glory and power and any political influence he has because of some feigned slight. Now, Oppenheimer did make fun of him, and this is a good lesson, right? If you're brilliant, there's no need to make other people feel bad for not being as brilliant as you.
True.
And I bet if we were to speak with J. Robert Oppenheimer, he would probably agree with that statement today. However, holding on to grudges for years and having the patience of a saint to like get your revenge, that's some like Count of Monte Cristo stuff that this is like a true story of this, right? Where Louis Strauss spends a lot of time putting together this cast of people who will testify against Oppenheimer, saying that if they were given the opportunity today, they wouldn't have let him have the security clearance that he needed to be able to run this program. Even friends of his who were his comrades in this kind of turn on him, and Oppenheimer doesn't fight back, and it drives his wife Kitty nuts. Emily Blunt, she is the most amazing looking alcoholic I've ever seen. I think all of these parts are played so beautifully well. She does not understand why he is just letting them do this to him until you mentioned it, this scene where she says, I mean, are you letting him do this to you so that, is this your penance for creating something that had such a horrible effect on humankind? Like, and I loved that. I loved that human aspect of it. I thought, I want to talk about the explosion because I know that that's hot on everybody's list. There's been all over TikTok about it, but I also want to talk about the lack of gore and the lack of gratuitous violence around the bomb. So one of the things I was terrified of watching this is because Christopher Nolan is a visual genius and he makes everything look really amazing. And I was really terrified that we were going to see things that would look incredibly amazing and absolutely awful watching the bombs fall and the effect that would have on humans. I'm so happy that he didn't do that because it, I think, would have taken away from what we see. And what we do see is there's a scene where they're showing slides. We don't see what the pictures are, but they're like, hey, turns out this is the effect of an atom bomb on a city, right? And here's what we're seeing. And they're describing things, but we're looking at people's reactions. And
it's all off screen. Yeah.
And I really think that we need to take a a page out of this book from Christopher Nolan, that we don't have to show that something is so horrible and graphic in order for it to have a huge effect on our hearts. Because I felt like I couldn't breathe when I saw that scene. I thought that was very classically done and less expensive. Which might be good if you're going to make a film that's going to be looked at by so many. Maybe ease off on the CGI and do something a little bit different. That being said, we should talk about this explosion because that's pretty amazing special effects.
Yeah, for sure. And I was with you. Like, I didn't know like how much of the explosions then Hiroshima and Nagasaki were going to play into this, but I think that it was really kind of brilliant, right? We see, like I mentioned, the bombs literally get loaded up onto trucks and taken out of the desert there, because really at that point, the bombs weren't a part of Oppenheimer's story anymore, right? He created them and then basically set them off into the world. So we don't see that, like you mentioned, the kind of they're going through the slides. So that really the only kind of visual indication of this that you get is kind of right after kind of the bombings happen, and they're having sort of a celebration, quote unquote celebration kind of party there at the kind of this town that they've built, and he starts to have a little bit of a mental breakdown, and everything's kind of shaking, and he sees a little bit kind of just in in the vision of his own mind there that you see. But yeah, we don't actually see the bombs drop, which I think was really good, because like I said, that wasn't really a part or anything at that point. Once those bombs left, it was out of Oppenheimer's hands. So I thought that was really well done. Yeah, let's talk about the explosion a little bit. There's several explosions. Kind of the first one that happens, they're exploding these panels that I guess are supposed to, I don't know, compress whatever's inside. I'm not going to pretend to know how any of that stuff works. But they're at their first little like bomb shelter kind of thing, and I think the one guy's like, "What did we learn?" And Oppenheimer says, "We need to move further back," which I thought was pretty great. But then, yeah, obviously the big one, you have the weapons test, and you have the soundscape coming in. Ludwig Göransson, who does the score for the film, is just going nuts. There's a lot of like ambient sound. Kind of the Ludwig Göransson is kind of known for using it. It was really loud at our theater last night. Never like obnoxiously so. It always felt like it was really sort of a narrative piece to have kind of these louder volumes coming in or out. I had a little bit of nightmare flashbacks to Tenet where you couldn't hear anything, but that wasn't the case here this time. So got that worked out, I guess. But yeah, the explosion looks really great. You see kind of Oppenheimer put his goggles on there, and then you see it happen. And I don't know how they filmed it. I hope they were safe when they did it. So
yeah,
good job.
I mean, I think they were far enough away. One thing that was really surprising to me, and I didn't know enough about it, so I had to go look it up. But how many people, were they all far enough away where none of them ended up having like radiation exposure and cancer later in life and all of that? Because that, as we know now, like that's actually the thing that it's the gift that keeps on giving after we drop these bombs, right? And so Los Alamos, like, you can't go there. You can't go and like look at these places because they're covered in radiation still, and will be for the rest of our lifetimes at least, right? So I really what more? I there was a lot. This film was just a lot. It was very vast. It was very anthem-like in the sense that so many things happened to tell this story, and there were tons of different characters that you saw. The attention to detail was just amazing. Again, you talked about like Rami Malek plays David Hill. He says maybe 7 words the first half of the movie, and then he kind of comes out at the end. And if you know anything about history, Lewis Strauss is trying to get a cabinet seat. He ends up not getting a cabinet seat because David Hill goes and testifies that Lewis Strauss is this really awful bully, and if he doesn't get his way, he will ruin your life. And he doesn't think that that's a really and he thinks, and he furthermore says that a lot of scientists in the scientific community feel that way, and that he shouldn't be allowed to represent the scientists, right? As a Secretary of Commerce. So I really loved the care with which they told the story, because I think that it if you're going to tell a story that is about something super dark and hard like this is, you have to do it with a really gentle hand. And I thought that they did that.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I mean, it was, I don't know, it's hard to even describe. You mentioned kind of the runtime and stuff of this, and we've talked about the editing and kind of the way that it's stringing these three stories together. It's cut really fast, which is really interesting, and it even like almost from like the start has kind of this, I don't know, like sense of urgency about it, which I thought was really interesting. Obviously, you get to the bomb, and that is kind of the culmination of kind of the, I don't know, like I don't even know how to say it. The kind of the big kind of flashpoint, obviously of the film is that, but the way that it's cut and edited, the way that the music keeps driving it, it felt very urgent to me. And we bemoan the 3-hour film a lot of times. This was 3 hours. To be completely honest, I was not looking forward to the 3-hour film. I mean, I knew it was going to be great and brilliant, make me think about all sorts of things that I didn't know that I was wanting to think about or not. But I have to say, this didn't feel like 3 hours at all. Like, this thing flew by, because it was so fast paced, and the way that it was cut and edited. There are 3-hour films that I love, Lord of the Rings, coming in over 3 hours. Even as much as I like that still feels long. But watching this yesterday, to me, it didn't feel long at all.
No, I agree completely. I mean, this was maybe one time in the last 6 movies that we've watched that are about the same length where I thought it was really worth it. So take that, take that for what it's worth. People, directors, maybe don't make a 3-hour film if you don't really have that much to say. But this, I feel like we could watch it again. I think this is a film you could watch over and over and see something new and see something different, and pick up on, not only from the decisions that they made. I mean, the shots are beautiful. Obviously, it's in Nevada, and so you have these very sweeping views, and on one hand, and then on the other hand, you've got these really beautiful kind of depictions of atoms that are moving around and spinning, and the art direction of where things are in time when they're walking along Cambridge and having some of these discussions in really peaceful places. I mean, I just think that was all put together so beautifully. So it wouldn't surprise me. I mean, if I could call it now, I definitely think this is going to be up for Best Picture. I think Robert Downey Jr. and Cillian Murphy are going to be up for Oscar nominations. Probably Emily Blunt.
It's tough. I'm going through all of the potential Oscar categories, and I'm having a real tough time not seeing it nominated for anything that it would be eligible for. Emily Blunt, Florence Pugh, Robert Downey Jr., Matt Damon, Cillian Murphy, they're for acting things. This was kind of based off of the book, American Prometheus, which now I'm very interested to read. Adapted screenplay, director, obviously Best Picture, original score, Ludwig Göransson. I don't know. It's a lot of soundscape stuff, so sometimes that plays well, sometimes it doesn't. That's kind of what Dune I thought was last year or 2 years ago, which won. Obviously all of the art things and stuff there too. So I don't know, like, I have a hard time not seeing it be in all of these categories in some way or another. But I mean, we still have some just absolute bangers coming. We have the second part of Dune, we have Killers of the Flower Moon still yet to come out this year. Florence Pugh, Dune 2, Florence going to be nominated for 2 Best Pictures probably this year, so good job, Miss Pugh. There you have our loving adoration.
You have our undying adoration and love. That's sure.
Right. Absolutely. But I don't know. I'm still like sitting on it. We saw this. It's not been quite 24 hours, and I still don't think that I've fully probably processed the message it was trying to say. I'm very excited to watch it again. I don't know if I'll make it out to the movie theater to see it, but definitely, as soon as it's able to be streamed or bought on some sort of Blu-ray disc or something, I'm very interested to see it again, because like you said, Michaela, I think that this is going to be something that you analyze again and again and again. It hits me the same way that watching something like Schindler's List does, kind of in that same way. That's this horrible sort of tale, but it really kind of makes you look inwards and analyze the way that you think about things and process things. Same with like the German film All Quiet on the Western Front from last year. Same kind of thing. All these movies kind of revolving around the world wars make you go introspective on this stuff. So really well done. I liked it quite a bit. So any final thoughts here on Oppenheimer, Michaela?
I just think, I'm glad that we keep making films about this time in history, because it's important for us to know, it's important for us to look back and learn from our mistakes, I guess, is just the in and out of it. Because I think that the main thing about this, and it goes back to the very opening sequence, right? When there's this that quote about Icarus, right? And stealing from the sun. There are consequences to actions, and it's really important that we think about those as we move forward. And it's hard. It's hard sometimes to kind of force yourself to think about some of these things because it's uncomfortable and it's not fun, or what many people would consider entertaining, but it is really important. And so I'm really glad that we were able to see this and talk about it, because it's an important part of history, and it's an important part as we move forward in life, thinking about again, just because we can do something doesn't mean that we should. Yeah, absolutely. So that is Oppenheimer. It's a very, very dense and well told story. So go check it out if you have the means and the desire to see it. And even if you don't make it out to see it, make sure you check out The Atomic Cocktail, because it was a good one. It was a hearty, stiff drink for sure, which was definitely needed. Coming out of the theater last night after seeing this one. So make one of those. Let us know what you think about the cocktail. Let us know what you think about Oppenheimer. Let us know for sure what Academy Awards it's going to win. Of course, I'm sure we'll be talking about this movie later, in this year at the turnover of next year when we get into kind of our Oscar coverage. We'll have to take a look and see how it's faring there. Pretty well, I would imagine. So let us know all that stuff. You can do it on our social medias, on Instagram and Threads. I guess it's at Drink the Movies, whatever Twitter is called now. We're still on there, I guess, for the time being too, at Drink the Movies. Facebook.com/Drink the Movies. You want to go to the website, which is www.drinkthemovies.com. We've got episode recaps. We've got pictures of the cocktails that we make. We've got stuff, links to the Discord, links to the Patreon, all that stuff. That's on the website. Go check that out there, and make sure you're tagging us when you're having something good to drink, when you're seeing a good movie. Let us know about it. Join us on Discord or post to our social medias. We love seeing all that stuff. We love getting feedback and cocktail recommendations, all that stuff. So make sure you're doing that, and make sure you're subscribed, so that way when we've got new episodes coming out. We don't know when this is going to be coming out. Quite honestly, we've got the strike going on, the writer's strike, the actor's strike, and kind of in solidarity, we're going to be holding these episodes back for some time, see how that goes, to show our support for the workers there that are striking. I don't know. So, keep that in mind, but make sure you're subscribed. We've got some other fun stuff, hopefully in the works in the meantime, and then you'll get these episodes when they come out. So, Michaela, where can people subscribe to the podcast, all that good stuff? You can find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, Good Pods, anywhere, wherever you're listening now. There's a subscribe button. You should press it. We right now we're doing 2 drops a week, and all the cocktail movie love. We're definitely going to be spreading some sort of love somewhere, no matter what. We're not going anywhere. We just need to figure out what we're going to do next. But if you're liking what you're hearing, more of it's coming. So and tell your friends, leave us a 5-star review, because all of this love will help get Drink the Movies, or Drink the Music, or Drink the Video Games, Drink the Books. We're just going to continue to drink.
Might just be drinks. I don't know. Might be drinks only here on out. I don't know for sure, but that is Oppenheimer. Let us know what you thought about it, and thank you so much for joining us. Hope to catch you next time, and we'll talk to you then on
Drink
the Movies. Oppenheimer stuff. It was good. Really
It
good.
was really good. Robert Downey Jr., Best Supporting Actor for the win.
For
I'm all
the
in.
win.